Detroit Lions. Oh my goodness, I was scared that I wouldn't be playing this soundbite again. But here we are. The Detroit Lions, for the first time in 30 plus years, they, ladies and gentlemen, have won a playoff game. What'd y'all do, Dan Campbell?
Kneecap.
Yes, sir. So, you're like, Bryce, you're a Steelers fan. Why are you so dang fired up for the Detroit Lions? Well, first of all, Detroit's a great city. And they have been through, people talk about, Cleveland's been through so much. And, this city, that. Nobody ever talks about Detroit. No, you think about what they've been through. Yes, I know the Pistons have won a championship in the 21st century, but the Pistons are literally the joke of sports. They've won 3 basketball games this year, and the season started back in October. Okay? The Tigers are a mess in Major League Baseball. Don't follow hockey enough to know about the Red Wings. My guess is they probably suck too. Could be dang wrong on that. I don't know anything about hockey. And the Lions have sucked for the vast majority of the last 30 years. Barry Sanders played for the Lions. It might be the greatest running back of all time. The last time that they won a playoff game in which they happened to do so against the Cowboys. I think it was like 38-6 back in 1991. It's been that long, ladies and gentlemen. And yesterday, with even me, who's a big Lions supporter from last year's draft, forget the offseason, the draft, I was a little skeptical. Like, okay, I think the Rams have the better quarterback. McVay's the better coach. They've been better than basically anybody in football over the last couple months. Their only losses to the Ravens in overtime on the road. Pretty impressive resume. Not feeling so good about this. And I took Los Angeles in the points, which I was right on. LA did cover. But I'm loyal to Detroit. It's going to be tight. It's going to be a little ugly. It's not going to be always aesthetically pleasing. In the second half, it was far from that. But somehow, some way, they're at home. They're going to find a way to pull it out by a single point, and doggone it, is that not exactly what they did? Really, the difference in the game in many ways, really the biggest difference, is the fact that the Rams, again, losing the game by a point, got to the red zone not once, not twice, 3 times. 3 field goals. That's what killed them. Couldn't cash in the red zone. And in some ways, I'm not going to lie, I'm a big-time Sean McVay fan. I think he's one of the 5 best coaches in the league. That was one of his worst coaching performances. Bad use of timeouts in the second half. The very predictable play calling in the red zone. He just kept going to Cooper Kupp every single time. It's like, bro, Puka Nacua is having, I should say, the game of his life, but Puka's been doing this all season. He had 181 receiving yards, but he just kept going to Kupp in the red zone. Hats off to Matthew Stafford. Listen, personally, I don't think Stafford should have been in the game after that hit. I think that was how that wasn't roughing the passers beyond me. Stafford should not have been in the game, but a gutsy performance back in Detroit, threw for 367, couple tuds, and a pass rating of 120. Stafford couldn't have played better. They just couldn't catch the red zone. Play calling was suspect in many ways. But if you're the Rams, listen, this was supposed to be a rebuilding year, and you came a point away from advancing to the divisional round. It could be worse. It's a well-coached team, well-run franchise, and a great quarterback who's getting up there in age. Stafford is 35 years old, but Rams draft well. They've been able to surround him with a good number of talent this year. We'll see what they do and how they approach this offseason. But for Detroit, now this is a team that everybody collectively, I think, liked coming into the season. I feel like the majority of people were like, yeah, they're better than Minnesota and Chicago, and they're better than Green Bay. They'll win the NFC North. I feel like that was the consensus pick. Some people took Minnesota. Few people took Green Bay to win the division, but by and large, people took Detroit to win the North. But everybody's like, yeah, they score a lot of points. Campbell's fun. Goff's a good quarterback. He's been to a Super Bowl, but they're not that serious of a team. Except for yours truly. I said, I'll pull out this clip if they win next week because I don't want to be premature. But I said as long ago as last April during the draft, I think the Lions are going to be in the NFC Championship game this season. Dallas, we know their playoff history. San Francisco, at that time, I was concerned about the health of Purdy. Philadelphia could take a step back. That was just a guess. Philadelphia did end up taking a step back. I don't know. I kind of like it. Seattle, Geno Smith, don't really trust them at quarterback. I don't know. This team in Detroit, they were 1-7 at one point in the season. And is that what the record was? 1-7, I think. It's 1-6. I apologize. 1-6. And they went on to win 8 of their last 10 games, got hot down the stretch. Goff played well. Defense showed signs of life. Then what did they do? They drafted Jahmyr Gibbs, who I freaking loved out of Alabama. They took that kid Sam Laporta out of tight end U, also known as Iowa. They addressed the defense of the draft. Brian Branch out of Alabama. Went out in free agency, got guys like C.J. Gardner-Johnson from the Philadelphia Eagles. Addressed the defense, relied on some of the younger guys there, such as Aiden Hutchinson, Alex Anzalone, brought in a veteran corner, shout out to a University of Tennessee guy, Cam Sutton. They addressed the holes in their team. And they went out and got David Montgomery, power back, to kind of take a little bit of the load off of Jahmyr Gibbs, which they got Montgomery before Gibbs, but still, they addressed their needs. It's Brad Holmes who deserves an immense amount of credit for doing what he did. And there's history. There's precedent for this, where it's coach we all like, Dan Campbell, with two great coordinators. Aaron Glenn on defense, who's done a marvelous job of the last month. I had serious concerns about this Lions team. I was really worried that, I was talking about my playoff weaknesses last week, the weakness of all 14 playoff teams. And for Detroit, I was like, I don't think they can win if it's not a shootout. Like, that was my concern. If the defense struggles and the offense has a bad day at the office, I didn't think they could win. Well, they did. Offense went nowhere in the second half, and they still won the game because they got the stops when necessary. They bent but didn't break down in the red zone. Now, nobody's going to mistake this defense for the 49ers or the Ravens, but I should say opportunistic. They don't get a ton of turnovers, but they need to get a stop in the red zone. Field shrinks a little bit. Got to be almost perfect to score on this defense. And Dan Campbell, talk about being wrong today. Was I not wrong on this guy? Matter of fact, I'm just going to say it. I'm just going to keep it real. Were the majority of us wrong on this guy when he was hired in early 2021? We saw that press conference. You heard a little bit in that soundbite there, the Oprah soundbite. You get a kneecap, you get a kneecap. Everybody gets a kneecap. He said, we're going to bite some kneecaps. It's like, oh, God, well, poor Detroit. Oh, it's just as bad as it's gotten. It's going to get worse. Now, is Dan Campbell going to be mistaken for the guy he faced last night, McVay? No, but I could argue out-coach McVay. Is he going to be put in the same discussion from an X's and O's standpoint with Shanahan, Andy Reid? No. But what he does is he gets Brian Johnson, who's going to be a head coach next year, who's the best offensive coordinator in football. And they go out, they trade Stafford, they're bringing Jared Goff, who's been to a Super Bowl. What do? They're like, Goff, kind of a pocket guy. We're going to draft a good offensive line, put it around him. We're going to draft Penei Sewell. We're going to take all these tackles and guards to protect our pocket guy. Give him receivers. Jamison Williams, drafted out of Alabama 2 drafts ago. All of the holes, they fill them. That's why I believe in this team. And Dan Campbell, 4-19-1 in his first 24 games. Wasn't looking so good. They were playing teams close, but oftentimes in a bad team, and Detroit was bad in 2021, average in 2022, by and large, take the entirety of the season. You build culture there. At that point, locker room can turn. They never once turned on Dan Campbell. The belief in that locker room, that can't be measured in X's and O's. That can't be measured in analytics or any of that. The belief in their head coach is unlike anything I've seen aside from maybe a few teams in all of professional sports. Dan Campbell, a lot of love for him. Ben Johnson, a lot of love for him. He's going to be a head coach. If he's not a head coach, somebody's doing something wrong in these front offices. General manager, Brad Holmes, doing a phenomenal job. And how about Jared Goff? Getting a win against his former team who gave up on him. Think that felt good for him? I'm telling you, this is why I believe in this Lions team. This is why I believe in this Lions team coming into the end of the year. The culture, night and day. Smart GM, good coach, smart coordinators, and a great roster. It's a new day in Detroit, Michigan in regards to the Lions. Pistons, different conversation. They got a ways to go. But as far as the Lions, get used to seeing this for years to come. These Lions-Packers races for the NFC North over the next few years, going to be pretty fun. Shout out Detroit. Shout out Detroit fans. Get to the NFC title game for the first time, I believe, in franchise history, certainly in the modern era. Shout out to the Lions, man. Good for them. Thanks so much for watching the show on YouTube, and be sure to go click that big red subscribe button and check out the other clips and full shows from Carving It Up Live, as well as our other incredible content creators here on the Grid Network.